Erev Shabbat Shalom Rabotai. We're continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Shvi'it. We're up to Perek Chet Mishnah Hey. Today's Mishnah should be Leil Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Arenbad Menuchato Began Eden. Amen. In yesterday's Mishnah Rabotai, we learned that when a person buys Shemitah produce, the money that he pays for the produce takes on Shemitah sanctity. Today's Mishnah Hey will give us more laws about spending Shemitah money. The Mishnah says, En notnim lo levayar. We cannot give Shemitah money to pay a well digger to dig wells in order to supply water for bathing or washing clothing. V'lo levalal. We cannot give Shemitah money to a bathhouse attendant to pay for a bath. V'lo lesapar. We cannot give it to a barber to pay for a haircut. V'lo lesapan. We cannot give it to a boat operator to pay for a boat ride, because Shemitah money is subject to the same restrictions as Shemitah produce. And since a person would not be allowed to use Shemitah produce for any of these things, he cannot pay for them with Shemitah money either. And the Mefarshim explain, the Rambam says in his commentary to the Mishnayot, none of these activities are similar to eating, and therefore you cannot pay for them with Shemitah produce. And the art school student brings down the Riben Malki Tzedek, who explains that riding on a boat obviously is not similar to eating in any way at all. Washing clothing is not similar to eating, because when you eat, the eater benefits from the food as it's being used up, but when you wash clothing, the detergent is used up right away, but the person only gets the benefit when the clothes become clean, and that doesn't happen until a while later. Quotes the Gemara Masechet Sukkah, page 48 for that. Bathing and taking a haircut also is not similar to eating, because they're only done once in a while, as opposed to eating, which is a daily need. But the Mishnah says, Aval noten hu levayar lishtot. A person can give Shemitah money to a well digger so that he can supply water to drink, because since a person can drink Shemitah produce, he can pay for drinks with Shemitah money. And the Mishnah concludes, Ulechulan hu noten matnat chinam. He may give Shemitah money to any of these workers as a free gift. And the Rav says, even if he knows that in return for this gift, they're going to provide their services for free. Now, even though it looks like he's paying them for the service with the Shemitah money, the Chazon Ish says it would be allowed as long as you truly intend for it to be a gift. You cannot trick the system. But if you intended truly for it to be a gift and they provided you the service for free, that is not an issue. That is then Rabotai Mishnah. Hey, Mishnah Vav is going to discuss now a topic we spoke about. The Torah orders that produce that grows by itself during Shemitah has to be declared ownerless. If a person guards produce unlawfully during Shemitah and he did not let others collect it, then even if later he decides to declare it ownerless, he cannot harvest it in the way that ordinary crops are harvested. The Mefarshim bring this, that they learn this out from the Psukim, Sefer Vayikra, chapter 25, Pasuk 5. The Mishnah says, Te'enim shel shvi'it en kotzin otan b'muktzeh, aval kotzeh otan b'charba. When harvesting Shemitah figs that were unlawfully guarded, we may not cut them with a fig knife, which is a tool designed for harvesting figs. But you can cut them with the ordinary knife, since it's an unusual way to harvest figs. Similarly, a person who harvests any Shemitah produce that was guarded has to use tools that are not normally used to harvest that particular kind of produce. Now, in addition to this law, which is required by the Torah, the Chachamim came and decreed that Shemitah produce that was guarded unlawfully cannot be processed either in the way that ordinary produce is processed. They added, the Torah says you cannot harvest them in the way that ordinary produce is harvested. The Chachamim came and said you can't even process it in the normal way that the produce is processed. The Mishnah gives us some examples. En dochin anavim begat, vadoechu ba'areva. We may not press Shemitah grapes in a wine press as they are usually pressed, but you can vadoechu ba'areva. You can press them in a kneading trough, which is a large dough usually used for kneading dough. Ve'enosin zetim bevad ufkotev. We may not crush Shemitah olives in an olive press and then squeeze out the oil with a heavy beam that's weighted down by a large stone like you usually do. Aval koteshu umachnis lebodida. Rather, one should crush the olives in a container that's not normally used for crushing olives, and then put them in a small olive press to extract the oil. The Mefarshim explain it's very important to understand that the producing oil from olives involves two steps. The Mefarshim tell us. Number one, the olives are first crushed or ground, and then they're pressed to release their oil. So according to the Tanna Kama, the first opinion we just said right now, when a person produces oil from Shemitah olives that were unlawfully guarded, he has to do both of these steps in an unusual way. Crushing or grinding, which would usually be done in parts of the olive press, have to be done in a separate container, and pressing has to be done in a smaller olive press instead of an ordinary larger one. Rabbi Shimon Omer, but Rabbi Shimon says, Af tochenu bebet abad u'maknis lebudida. A person can even grind the olives in a regular olive press, but then he must put them in a small olive press to extract the oil. Now the Mefarshim explain that according to Rabbi Shimon, only the actual pressing has to be done in an unusual container. That's why Rabbi Shimon says. But however, the crushing or the grinding, which is only the preliminary stage, that can be done in an olive press as usual. That's why Rabbi Shimon says, Tochenu bebet abad. No, you can grind the olives on a regular olive press because that's only a preliminary stage. Aval, however, machnis lebodida. You have to put them in a small olive press to extract the oil in an abnormal way, whereas the Tana Kama told us both have to be done abnormally. Eno sin zetim bebad. You cannot crush the Shemitah olives in an olive press, and you have to put it in a small olive press to extract the oil. The Rab tells us, halakha ki Rabbi Shimon, the halakha follows Rabbi Shimon. A person can grind the olives that were guarded unlawfully in Shemitah in a regular olive press, but he must then put them in a small olive press to extract the oil, which is an abnormal way to do it. That is in Rabotai, today's Mishna Yomi. Everybody should have an Erev Shabbat Shalom. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.